Good afternoon. Welcome to the Concordia University, Texas College of Health Sciences pinning ceremony for students graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree. I invite y'all to stand and join the faculty and staff of the College of Health Sciences in recognizing the class of Fall 2022. If you are able, please remain standing as Pastor Jake Bessling, our campus pastor, offers the opening prayer.
Is there a future nurse in the house? Yes, there they are. Why don't you look, and I saw some of this already, look to those that you might see in the crowd that love you, that cared about you, that got you here, those professors, those moms and dads, boyfriends, girlfriends, spouses, grandparents. We appreciate you. We are excited that all of you would be here as we open up in prayer. I'm going to open up with a prayer that Mother Teresa wrote of Calcutta. And if you don't know this one, maybe look it up after. And this could be a prayer that you would pray daily as you serve with the hands and feet of Jesus. Let's pray. Dearest Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one God, world without end, may I see you today and every day in the person of the sick, and while nursing them, minister unto you. Though you hide yourself behind the unattractive disguise of the irritable, the exacting, and the unreasonable, may I see you and still recognize you and say, Jesus, my patient, how sweet it is to serve you. Lord, give me that seeing faith that my work will never become monotonous, that I may always find a joy in humoring the fancies and gratifying the wishes of all the poor who suffer. O beloved sick, how doubly dear you are to me when you personify Christ, and what a privilege it is of mine to be allowed to tend to you. Dearest Lord, make me appreciate the dignity of my high vocational calling and its many responsibilities. Never permit me to disgrace it by giving way to coldness, unkindness, or impatience. And oh God, since you are Jesus, my patient, may you make me more patient. Bear with me in my faults. Look only to my intentions, which is always to serve you in the person of each and every one I care for. Lord, increase my faith. Bless my efforts and work now and forever. And everyone said, amen. I invite you to take a seat.
Thank you, Pastor Bessling. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Amber Shamus, the Senior Director of the College of Health Sciences.
Welcome, everyone. This is truly one of the most amazing events that we hold every year. I want to thank all the friends and families for attending and also for your support of these students over the last 2 years or more, which has really been a trying journey for them, and they could not have done it without your support. Thank you as well to all of our Concordia staff and faculty and others that have supported these students throughout their time here in the nursing program. And also, thank you for our College of Health Science Advisory Board members that are in attendance in person and online for your support of the College of Health Sciences and this nursing program. Nursing graduates, it has been an honor to work with you throughout the nursing program. I'm blessed to have been part of your journey. You have faced immense challenges and grown from these challenges. As we honor you today, please take time to celebrate your hard work and accomplishments. As you receive your nursing pin, I would like to share the history and significance that the nursing pin represents. The nursing pin dates back more than 1,000 years as a symbol of service. During the 12th century Crusades, those who cared for the ill and the injured were given large Maltese crosses to wear on the battlefields as a symbol of their service to the sick and wounded soldiers. The Maltese cross is still used by some nursing programs in their pin design. And over time, this symbol was modified to become a family coat of arms that has continued to symbolize service to the community. Florence Nightingale was awarded the Red Cross of St. George in recognition of her dedication and service to the ill and wounded during the Crimean War. Florence then began awarding new nursing graduates of hospitals medals of excellence. Hospitals then began to award badges or pins to nursing students and nurses to identify them as those educated to serve the health needs of society and the community. As the recognition of nursing service to the profession, pinning ceremonies have evolved and have awarded nursing graduates pins to represent their service and their devotion to society. This is a tradition in our program and many programs. The pin identifies the nursing program, and each pin is unique in its design. Many pins have a symbolic meaning that represent the program and the history of the nursing profession. And it marks your achievement, nursing graduates, as a graduate and now entering the profession as a nurse. Nursing graduates, wear your pin with pride. It's a symbol of service and a reminder of your accomplishments and of the many, many professional responsibilities of the nursing profession. At this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Jacob Pena. Mr. Pena grew up in North Austin and graduated from Leander High School. Shortly after graduating, he started service in the United States Marine Corps, was stationed in Arlington, Virginia, and in 2009, he deployed to Iraq, where he trained and advised the Iraqi Border Patrol and served as a machine gunner. In 2010, he exited active duty and pursued study at Concordia University, Texas. In 2014, He earned his Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Concordia University, Texas. After graduation, he worked in telemetry, med-surgical, trauma, and critical care nursing. He worked as a critical care nurse in New York City during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. And currently, he works at Del Seton Medical Center in Austin as a critical care nurse, critical response team member, charge nurse, and clinical nurse supervisor. Please join me in welcoming Jacob Pena.
Naturally, the response would be kill. But this is a different setting. I'm a nurse now. So let me set my timer here because I feel like I'm a man of few words, but once I get going, I talk too long. All right, so I was pretty nervous thinking about coming up and doing this and agreeing to do it. Obviously, I said yes being here, but I thought to myself, well, I sit there, I'll just imagine, go home, read my kids' bedtime stories. I'm just gonna read you guys a story, right? Story goes like this. I titled it, Being Courageous Whenever Everyone is Looking to You for Answers. So this focuses a little bit more on my story, but I tie it into focusing on you guys. Today's about y'all. Back in December 2019, I had already been working in New York City as a contractor for nearly about 2 months whenever I had decided I was being offered an extension for my contract to go ahead and extend from February 2nd, 2020 to May 2020. Preluding the pandemic, back in 2018, my wife and I had our second child. Her name, Gisette. She had given birth to our daughter. We were in the hospital the night before we were supposed to go ahead and get discharged. The L&D nurse goes on ahead and does her initial assessment that evening. She ends up placing her stethoscope on my daughter's chest, listening to her. Seemed like it was just a little bit too long compared to what my initial assessments are. I'm just more or less a guy that, put it on there, move on. Got plenty of things to do. But we all give good assessments, and that's exactly what this nurse was doing. She took her time, she relied on her assessment skills, and ended up asking us, has anybody ever said to y'all or mentioned that your daughter has a heart murmur? Has a pediatrician said that, or any of the other previous nurses said anything like that? Me and my wife look at each other. My wife's got a real concerned look on her face, naturally. And we both replied no. So, moving forward, she eventually requires cardiac surgery. She ends up getting open heart surgery in 5 months, or at 5 months old. And she ends up having a full recovery for a atrial septal defect and a ventricular septal defect. So, following surgery, as we're going to all our cardiology appointments, we ended up, discussing throughout that time what we would go ahead and do next within our journey of life. And at that moment, we decided that we would go ahead and move to New York City. And I went on ahead and pitched the idea that I would go ahead and take on travel nursing to go ahead and use that as a segue from point A to point B with plenty of adventures and contracts in between. We ended up going everywhere from Colorado, Arizona, all the way up to the Northeast to Providence, Rhode Island. It was quite the journey. So fast forwarding, ended up going, moving back towards 2019, we left and ended up in New York City. I ended up taking on that extension for that contract in March of 2020, pushing me out to May. Everything had already been in the news that was going on in Kirkland, Washington with the long-term care facility that was being taken by storm with positive COVID-19 patients. So, there was plenty of chatter going on within our hospital system where I was at currently at the time in New York City about what was going to happen next. Everybody was obviously very fearful and worried about the situation because we kind of expected that it would head our way. We already knew that this respiratory virus is obviously difficult to contain back in the Pacific Northwest. So I remember finishing at the end of the first week of March, my couple of shifts, and I had a good stretch off, like a good 5 days, maybe a week. And I hear from other coworkers that we ended up getting our first positive cases in the hospital. So during that time, my recruiter reaches out to me, and they have all these things to tell us, regarding what's to happen within our contracts, et cetera. All the HR stuff that they wanted to explain to us, regardless. I had to sit down and talk to my wife, figure out, well, what am I going to do? Because we knew nothing at the time of how this respiratory virus was going to play out. And so, I sat there and discussed, well, do I quit? And we waited out. I take on a new contract later on down the road. Should I go ahead and disregard my fear, in the face of danger and go ahead and just trust my knowledge, skills, and experience? Or do I just go on ahead and leave the nursing career in general and not risk being around anything dangerous like that to bring into my own household? So obviously I'm here today because I ended up moving forward and, prayed plenty, had a lot of talks with God in that week, and, came to the conclusion that, throughout my career that I, everything from day one of finding out that my daughter had congenital heart defects, all that kind of played out to get us to this point in our lives. So, my answer was I would stay put and go ahead and help with everything going on. So, with all that set in motion, God had helped me figure out how to be courageous within the face of fear. With my background within surgical trauma, often they would go ahead and send me at this hospital. I would float a lot to the surgical units, like the burn ICU, the surgical ICU, the cardiothoracic ICU, and the neuro ICU. But more often than not, I would be floating to the medical ICU. There's something with the SICU and the MICU where we just kind of have a little bit of animosity against each other. We just don't like floating to each other's units for whatever the reason is. So there I was, a surgical ICU trauma nurse, floating often to the medical ICU. But eventually I would find out that it was one of the better teams that I really enjoyed working with. So got really comfortable, especially at that time within my career, had already been doing critical care for a little bit of time to where the medical ICU wasn't foreign to me. And made really good friends with this gentleman named Roberto, another one of the critical care nurses in the medical ICU. Leading up to those first couple of positive cases of COVID, Roberto would go ahead and explain to me his COVID plan. And within that discussion, one night we were talking about his plan. He went on ahead and let me know that he had told his manager and his team of nurses that he would be one of the few people or wanting to go ahead and volunteer to take these patients initially. He wanted to know as much as he could about this respiratory disease and what was to come of it, to be able to help prepare and manage these patients as best as possible, and to be able to help coach and train the rest of the nursing staff to go ahead and fight this disease. He understood this, I think, more than anyone. He wanted to go ahead and help the sickest of the sickest as much as possible. So whenever those first couple of COVID positive patients ended up getting admitted to the hospital, he did just as he had planned. When those patients ended up beginning to come in during that second week of March, I was still being floated to the medical ICU, to a lot of the surgical-related ICUs, because they wanted to go ahead and designate those medical ICU nurses specifically to taking those patients, as the medical ICU primarily is full of pulmonary acute diseases. So, if I recall, I think maybe like my first or second shift, but definitely by my third shift that second week into March, I was back in the medical ICU. Because they had planned initially for these patients to be only taken, or I wouldn't say only, but to have been taken care of by one nurse only. We call that a one-to-one as far as the ratio. It's one nurse to one patient if they're that sick. So little did we know at the time that we were going to be going to be inundated by masses being affected by this disease. So that plan ended up, falling through the cracks, obviously. And then I found myself back in that medical ICU, like I had said. So soon enough, eventually, every patient within the medical ICU was on a mechanical ventilator, and then all the other ICUs ended up taking nothing but these patients and so forth. You guys kind of know the story, how that goes. And they were just so sick that as much medications that we had to help maintain their blood pressures, it just wasn't enough. And if their blood pressures were barely maintained, then their ability to exchange gas and breathe effectively, even on a ventilator, was probably not enough as well. So pretty much what I'm saying is that these people really weren't surviving. If anything, that they were actively dying. Eventually, we were all just trying to do the best that we could with what we had, shift by shift, day by day, which turned into months of watching these patients suffer and die. No one saw the patients except the nursing staff, the doctors, the respiratory therapists, and the clinical assistants. We were all they had. Eventually, in the beginning, many had died before we could even get to them and provide heroic measures, as it was a process to go ahead and don our PPE or personal protective equipment, let alone provide them comfort in their last moments of life. It was demoralizing. All the rumors that you would hear were pretty much true. If not, it was just kind of more or less the tip of the iceberg. It was horrible conditions, how dire the resources were, how the staff were barely able to handle, if not handle really so much an insurmountable task that was all true. Even the pictures and stories about having portable freezers and box trucks converted into freezers for makeshift morgues for the deceased. Eventually, every shift I'd come into work and have new patients because the previous ones had either passed or I would float to a new unit and not really know what had happened and just wonder if those previous people that I had taken care of had made it for another 24 hours. At this point, I'm pretty sure that I painted a dark picture of how terrible things were. But before moving forward from the subject, I just briefly want to run you guys through one last memory that I have from one of the toughest shifts that I had endured during that time. As you guys know, like I was saying about critical care, typically we take 2 patients versus 1, unless they're just that sick. And as many of you brand new nurses know, a lot of the times it's pretty tough and difficult to juggle taking care of 4 to 6 patients, even on a med-surg unit. These patients just required that much more care being in the critical care setting. So I ended up getting floated to this unit one night in the pre-op and post-anesthesia care unit that was turned into a makeshift COVID unit. The unit was structured as a long, or kind of like a long oval type of hallway, big circle. And prior to that, it was just an open unit, open bay kind of area with curtains dividing all these patients. And throughout the hallway, once it was converted, they ended up putting in some plastic partitions to help enclose that area. What that ended up doing was making room to provide and contain patients that were all lined up, and there was 8 patients to this one kind of hallway or squad bay, if you will. There would be 2 nurses or CRNAs or registered nurse anesthetists that would help take care of these patients. Divided between those 8 patients, it was these 2 people. So besides you having 4 patients that were extremely sick, you would also have one person on the outside of that tent area or that partition that would be your runner. They would sit there. Their only job was to go ahead and grab things for us, supplies. We were passing them blood samples to go run and tube to the lab to get ran for analysis, etc. As helpful as they were, sometimes it just felt like it wasn't really much help at all because their training was specialized in a completely different area. So it was very difficult for us to all be on the same page without them having that critical care background. On this given shift, I recall barely sitting at all. I was just so busy with hanging one bag that was running out of medication on one IV pump for a patient just to finish stopping that alarm to go run to the next one immediately after that. Pretty much, that was kind of how that night went. You just never really rested, and by the time you're done resetting one alarm, another patient's alarming. These people were extremely sick and with having that many patients, it was just difficult to even provide regular care that would be more or less the standard, like giving them oral care every 2 hours and cleaning out their mouth or turning them to help prevent bed sores, which are all standards that we do. So instead, you're prioritizing your care based on who had a lethal alarm going off on the monitor. Their oxygen levels dropping, you running over there to go ahead and suction them because you're sitting there drowning in a pool of their own secretions. So later that night, going into the morning, all my patients had ended up surviving throughout the night. As I was going home, I just thought to myself that these patients ended up getting the worst care possible when they required the best care possible. But I thought to myself it would be even worse if somebody else or myself quit, then these people would just be that much more worse off. So, not sure who else here in this room besides these new nurses here have much insight and experience in this area, but what I've been discussing, but I wanted to go ahead and share this little bit of my story, not because I wanted to make this about myself today, but because you guys have worked tirelessly to get here, and I commend every single one of you guys for your bravery and selflessness for answering the call for this highly challenging competitive vocation of a career. I wanted to make the point that you're going to go ahead and have unforeseen challenges that you're going to end up facing. These challenges you weren't able to practice in the Sims lab, but you guys have been given plenty of time to go ahead and learn concepts and take all this stuff forward to use as tools to get you through these times that you're going to need to have courage and bravery. So now that you guys have the tools that you've learned within this institution and these walls, now it's going to be your turn to go ahead and apply these tools to this given situations or other situations, obviously. Initially, I had struggled with the idea of what to talk about today. So who better to ask than my 6-year-old son? I said to Oliver, I said, what should I talk about? And I had also asked Dr. Shamus, I wasn't too sure what I should talk about. And she asked that I go ahead and touch and talk about a little bit of my experience in New York City at the time of the pandemic, or the epicenter of the pandemic. And my son said, you should talk about bravery and having courage. So those two, I felt like they went together really well. And that's how I came to talking about this situation. The light bulb pen went off. So through your professors and instructors, you guys have learned to think critically. For example, every answer to those test questions that all look the same, you know which answer is the best answer. You've all learned to care for a diverse patient population throughout all spectrums of life, like utilizing therapeutic communication on your patients who's covered in feces hanging out in a veil bed. You've all learned to deliver compassionate care, not just for your patients during end of life, but also by caring for each other whenever no one else around you has dealt with the struggles throughout the program that you guys have gotten through. As frustrating and as challenging of a time that this has been for every one of you guys to get here, every one of these professors and instructors has asked only what they would have asked of themselves if in your shoes. They have given you the tools to succeed and have helped you build a foundation to be able to deliver safe and effective care in the highest possible standards. They have given you the tools for you all to go into the world and to be brave and courageous. Thinking back to where I was whenever I was in your shoes, I would never have thought that I would have been able to build on this foundation to get the experience and knowledge to where I'm at today. But here I am, and you guys will be here one day as well. I thought I was brave whenever I first got out of the Marine Corps coming off of a combat deployment, but that was also until I got to nursing school and we're sitting there doing physical exams and everybody's taking their shirts off pretty much in their underwear and we're having to sit there and assess each other. So now, whenever I do precept newer nurses, eventually I end up telling them something to the effect, something along the lines of, well, if an old dumb Marine like myself can learn difficult concepts, then you guys can learn whatever it is that you set your mind towards. Of course, I'm joking, because not all Marines stick to the crayon diet. But in all seriousness, my point is that with self-application and self-discipline, y'all can do everything and anything that you want because of the foundation that you guys have developed to get here today. I say this because every one of you is an extremely bright individual, hard worker, I guarantee it. And again, I'm gonna be repetitive and I'm gonna say that y'all wouldn't be here today. So at this time, I'd ask that you take a moment to give yourselves and your instructors a round of applause, acknowledging both your hard work and in appreciation of their endless efforts to get you here today. are going to be plenty of times when you're called upon to be courageous, whether it be responding to your patients during an emergency situation, your peers turning to you for answers and guidance in a stressful situation, or simply answering those late night FaceTime calls from your family members asking, "It isn't supposed to look like this, is it?" when looking for medical advice. So there are going to be plenty of times when you're scared, and that's okay, because being courageous is about making the best choices and carrying out the most difficult tasks in the face of fear. So continue to build upon all that you've learned and accomplished within these walls, because today you are now today's leaders. I'd like to thank Concordia and the Department of Nursing for having me as a guest speaker, and I'd like to congratulate you guys all on your outstanding accomplishments today. And don't stop here. Keep working hard. It's time to celebrate, but go ahead and start grinding it back out. Get ready for that NCLEX. Y'all are going to do great. Congratulations. "10 minutes over, I told y'all."
Thank you, Mr. Pena. I would now like to introduce Juana Robles, the Student Nursing Association President and graduating senior.
Thank you. In the back of the programs, there is a nursing pledge. If all the nurses and nursing students in the audience can stand and recite the nursing pledge with me. Okay. Before God and in the presence of this assembly, we promise to practice the art and science of nursing toward increasing patients' physical, spiritual, and emotional health based on evidence and current nursing research, to acknowledge the privilege to hold their lives in our care, and to practice nursing in partnership with our patients, to acknowledge the privilege to comfort our dying patients into death with dignity, to hold those entrusted to our care with respect, affirm their innate worth, and hold confidence their private information, to advocate for the health and needs of our patients, respecting their cultural and religious beliefs, to act as leaders in promoting health, to hold in esteem those who have guided our path and who welcome us into the profession, to help strengthen fellow nurses and advance the aims of our nursing profession, and to share our knowledge with, encourage, and welcome future nurses. Thank you. You may be seated.
And now we will recognize our graduating seniors.
Juana Robles. She's dedicating her pin to her mother, Brandy, and her brothers and sisters. Her future plans are labor and delivery at St. David's Round Rock.
Mackenzie Aguirre. She's dedicating her pin to George and Maria Aguirre, and her plans are to be an oncology nurse at Medical City, Dallas.
Maria Sanchez. She's dedicating her pin to Rodolfo, Maria, Rosalind Sanchez, and Amy Radel. Her future plans is to become a pediatric ER nurse.
Laura Saucedo. She's dedicating her pin to God, her husband, family, and her supportive sisters. And her plan is to be the best nurse she can be.
Vanessa Cabrales. She's dedicating her pin to her family. She couldn't have done it without them. Love y'all, she says. Her future plans are to go to the NICU at Seton Medical Center, Austin.
Lisa Adams. She's dedicating her pin to the best family she could ask for, and her future plans are to be a pediatric hematology oncology nurse at St. Louis Children's.
Kiana Bonner. She's dedicating her pin to God, her husband, children, and mom. Her future plans are labor and delivery at Methodist Metropolitan.
Yasmin Bautista Jaimes. She's dedicating her pin to her mother and sister, and her plan is to be an ICU nurse at Seton Medical Center, Austin.
Melissa Martinez Aguirre. She's dedicating her pin to her amazing parents, supportive sisters, and loving boyfriend. Her future plans is going to labor and delivery at St. David's Round Rock.
Osmara Rios. Her plan is to dedicate her pin to her parents and to be an OR nurse at Dell Children's.
Krishana Laborte. She's dedicating her pin to her son Julian and her support system. Her future plans is to work in women's health in Dallas.
Paige Kenyon, dedicating her pin to her husband Michael and kids Easton, Sadie, Aria, and Hallie, and she plans to work in the neuro ICU at Dell Seton Medical Center.
Mackenzie Kendall. She's dedicating her pin to her husband Jack Bradley Vaught. Her future plans are L&D at St. David's Women's Center.
Julia Idarola Scarpati, dedicating her pin to her husband Nicholas, and her plan is to be an emergency department nurse at Yale in New Haven, Connecticut.
Tori Jones. She's dedicating her pin to her mom and dad for making this happen, and Shane for the support. Her future plans is the NICU at St. David's, Maine.
Christian Anderson, dedicating his pin to William, Ben, Teresa, and Cheeto for all the support they gave him, and to work in pediatrics and make a difference in children's lives.
Matthew Alhorn. He's dedicating his pin to his mom, Cindy, and his future plans are Seton Williamson ER or ICU, with future plans to be an acute care NP.
Satoria Ray, dedicating her pin to her parents, Dr. Bridget Sterling and Jermaine Ray. Her plan is to become a perioperative nurse.
Bianca Phelps. She's dedicating her pin to her parents and grandparents. Her future plans are to become an operating room nurse.
Alina Regmi, dedicating her pin to herself, her parents, sister, husband, son, and all of her family. And her plan is to become a CRNA.
Audra Davies. She's dedicating her pin to her daughter, Adeline, and her future plans are to become a NICU nurse.
Cynthia Uzogu. Her plan is to dedicate her pin to her family, Robert, Professor Lahan, and her friends. Thank you for encouraging me. And to be a psychiatric nurse practitioner.
Alexa Ezra. She's dedicating her pin to her mother, and her future plans are to become an ER nurse.
Amy Villarreal, dedicating her pin to God, her entire family, and Esther, and her plan is to be a pediatric oncology nurse at MD Anderson.
Esther Daniels. She's dedicating her pin to her mother, Sharon, family, and Amy. Her future plans are to be a NICU nurse at Dell Children's.
Susanna Amos, dedicating her pin to her family for their prayers and support, and her future plans are to work at labor and delivery and to make a difference in people's lives.
Elizabeth Cole. She's dedicating her pin to her husband, Chris, her two boys, Joseph and Jesse, her parents, Joe and Sylvia, who have sacrificed a lot and supported her throughout this journey. Her future plans are to work in labor and delivery.
Rachel Flores, dedicating her pin to her friends and family that supported her through this process, especially her mom, and her plan is to be an emergency department nurse here at St. David's downtown.
Ashley Hernandez. She writes her dedication as, "Thank you to my parents for shaping me to the woman I am today. I am so blessed to have all my loved ones in the audience. Without them, I would not be crossing the stage. I love you all." Her plans are to be a PICU nurse at Dell Children.
Sabina Federlin, dedicating her pin to her grandmother Sabine and her mom, dad, and DJ. And her plan is to be a CVICU nurse at Heart Hospital of Austin.
Alice Lee. She's dedicating her pin to her mom and dad, sister, Andy, and Benny. Her future plans are L&D at St. David's, North Austin.
Abigail Jones, dedicating her pin to her mom, roommate, and little sister. Thank you for everything. And her future plans are to be an intermediate care nurse at Del Seton.
Jeannie Kim. She's dedicating her pin to her friends, family, and her boyfriend, Joe. And her future plans are to work at St. David's, Maine in the OR.
Morgan Dalio, dedicating her pin to her family and boyfriend, Vince. And her plan is to be a pediatric CVICU nurse at Stanford Children's in California.
Catherine Hamilton. She's dedicating her pin to her mom, and her future plans are to be an operating room nurse.
Macy Coronado, dedicating her pin to her family and her husband, Gabe, and her plans are to be a nurse at Seton, Maine in neurology.
Jacqueline Goodson. She's dedicating her pin to her parents, Susie and Michael Goodson. Her future plans are ER nurse, travel nurse, prison nurse, and future nurse practitioner.
Abigail Garza, dedicating her pin to her parents, sisters, grandma, and boyfriend, with future plans to be a pediatric oncology nurse at Methodist Children's in San Antonio.
Paige Brimmer. She's dedicating her pen to her sister Sullivan, and her future plans are to work at Dell Children's in the emergency room.
Lauren Braswell. Dedicating her pen to her mom and dad, I owe you everything, and her future plans are to be a cardiac ICU nurse at University of Washington Medical Center.
Ashley Roach. She's dedicating her pen to her dad, the most supportive person in her life. Her future plans are pediatric cardiac ICU nurse at Dell Children's.
Alyssa Smith. Dedicating her pen to her village, especially her parents and her Nana, and her future plans are to be a NICU nurse in Southern California.
Emma Sierra. She's dedicating her pen to her mom, Catherine, a nurse of 20 plus years, also her dad, Joe, brother, Sam, and her love, Landon. Her future plans are working on a neuro floor, transitioning to the ER in Florida.
Carolina De Leon. Dedicating her pen to her parents and sister, and her plan is to work in oncology.
Addison Machen Gray. She's dedicating her pen to her husband and parents. Her future plans are to be an ICU nurse.
Kara Foley, dedicating her pen to Cameron, Luke, Katie, and her grandparents, and her plan is to be a labor and delivery nurse at St. David's, Georgetown.
Eva Michelle Wilson. She's dedicating her pen to her husband David and their girls, Reese and Piper, and their angel Cooper. She writes, "You were all drafted into this nursing program with me, and I would not be graduating today without you." Her future plans are Dell Children's NICU nurse.
Carolina Moreno, dedicating her pen to her mom, Maria Rosa, and family. And her future plans are to be an ICU nurse at St. David's before CRNA school.
Samaya Kianpur. She's dedicating her pen to all of her professors, her family, and friends. Her plans are to work as an ER nurse at Memorial Hermann, Houston.
Carly Combs, dedicating her pen to her dad, Dr. Combs, and her future plans are to be a CVICU nurse at the Heart Hospital of Austin.
Caitlin Turner. She's dedicating her pen to Xavier, Emily, and her parents. Her future plans are Dell Children's Neuro.
Sarah Clayton, dedicating her pen to her family who has supported me, especially her mom and Trey. And her future plan is to go into the ER residency at Del Seton.
Amanda Barba. She is dedicating her pen to her mom and sisters and all her loved ones that helped her get her here. Her plans are ER nursing at Del Seton Medical Center.
Noelle Rankin, dedicating her pen to John, my mom, my sisters, and Millie and Murphy. And her plan is to be an emergency room nurse in Boston.
Tiffany Polk. She's dedicating her pen to her family who love and supported her and her nursing family who uplifted her. Her future plans are critical care expert and nurse educator at St. David's, Maine.
Zenaida Reyes, dedicating her pen to her grandmother Mary, mother Catherine, sisters Christina and Cecilia, and her Tinks and doggy Heaven. Her plan is to be a critical care nurse at St. David's South Austin Medical Center.
Aliana Roach. She is dedicating her pin to her husband Caleb and her parents Bobby and Anna. Her plans are working as an L&D nurse at Hendrick Hospital.
Andrea Dye. Dedicating her pin to her mom, family, and partner Ian, and her future plans are to take more naps and go into neurotrauma ICU at Memorial Hermann.
Racine Brookins. She's dedicating her pin to God, her mom and dad, Mrs. Alberta, and Kayla. Her plans are ED nursing at Seton, Maine, Austin.
Stephanie Franz, dedicating her pin to her grandfather, mother, and father, and her future plans are to be a CVICU nurse practitioner.
Sky Taylor. She's dedicating her pin to God, her family, and friends for all their love and support. Her work plans are working at St. David's North Austin in the emergency room.
Phoebe Udamsuri, dedicating her pin to her mom, stepdad, Andrew, Nathan, and Catherine, with future plans of being a NICU nurse at St. David's North Austin.
Brandon Torres. He's dedicating his pin to his grandma and sister. He says, "Thank you for always supporting me." His future plans are cardiovascular ICU nurse at Dell Children's Medical.
Anessa Tobias, dedicating her pin to her amazing husband, David, and her loving mother, father, and brother. Her plan is to be an ICU nurse at Seton Northwest.
Martura Tiv. She's dedicating her pin to Michael, Q-Tip family, and friends Amara and Paula. Her future plans are to go to Buc-ee's.
Lindsay Bureau, dedicating her pin to her husband Marcus and daughter Mavry, and her plan is to work at the St. David's North Austin ER.
Zena Loya. She is dedicating her pin to Dr. Shamus, her mom, and her dogs Sky, Miller, and Major. Her future plans are to work at St. Luke's and eventually to become a CRNA.
Dottie Floyd, dedicating her pin to her husband, kids, and our parents, and her plan is to be an emergency room nurse at Baylor Scott and White Marble Falls.
Heather Huggins. She's dedicating her pin to all those who supported her throughout this transformative process. Her future plans are working in the surgical ICU at Seton Williamson.
Kylie Harmon, dedicating her pin to her husband David, mom, sisters, and in-laws, and her future plans are to be a Dell Children's ER nurse.
Natalie Gonzalez. She's dedicating her pin to God and her parents, John and Debbie. Her future plans are labor and delivery.
Tyler Grishkowski, dedicating her pin to her parents, and her plan is to go into surgical oncology at Dell Seton Medical Center.
Jennifer Urdiales Castro. She's dedicating her pin to her friends and especially her family. Her future plans are OR nursing or NICU nursing.
Jose Manuel Soto, dedicating his pin to his family, kids, and his late grandparents, and his plan is to be an ICU nurse.
Destiny Alvarez. She's dedicating her pin to Crescencio Perez, her husband Bryant, kids Lila, Ashton, and Cruz, and her family for all their patience and guidance. Her future plans are an ICU nurse and then nurse practitioner school.
Amanda Alvarado Mancada, dedicating her pin to her husband Anthony, Papa Duke's family, best friends, and fur babies, Chanchito. And her plan is to become a CRNA and an ICU nurse. And she says, I love you all.
Brenda David. She's dedicating her pin to family and friends, and above all, her Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Her future plans are to pass the NCLEX and to be the best nurse in NICU, pediatrics, and cardiology.
Ivy Jennings, dedicating her pin to family and friends, and her future plans are to be an emergency department nurse.
Megan Stewie. She's dedicating her pin to her family and friends, and her future plans are to work at St. David's North as a NICU nurse.
Ashton Dilworth, dedicating her pin to her family and friends, and her plan is to work in postpartum at St. David's North.
Riley Smith. She's dedicating her pin to her family and friends. Her future plans are to work at UC Health in Colorado as an emergency department nurse.
Jin Wu, dedicating her pin to her family, and her future plans are to be a dialysis nurse.
Carrot Robinson. She's dedicating her pin to her 4 children, Hakeem, Hosea, Hezekiah, and Kara. Also, God and all those who believed in her. Her future plans are to work as an L&D nurse at Carl R. Darnell Army Medical Center.
Janelle Scott, dedicating her pin to Brian and Antoinette Scott, as well as her friends and family. Her future plan is to work as an ER nurse at Dell Children's.
Alyssa Castellano. She's dedicating her pin to her family and friends and her dog, Winter. Her future plans are mother-baby nurse at Seton, Maine, Austin.
Carla Gomez, dedicating her pin to her family and to Anthony for all of his support, and her plan is to be an ICU nurse.
Elizabeth Talley. She's dedicating her pin to her mother and her brothers. Her future plans are to work at St. David's Round Rock NICU.
Alexis Watson, dedicating her pin to her mom, family, and boyfriend, Matt. And her future plans are to work in labor and delivery at St. David's North Austin.
Hunter Corral. She's dedicating her pin to her husband and parents. Her future plans are the universe, to see where it takes her.
Oliver Urbina, dedicating his pin to Debbie, his family, and those who supported him. And his future plans are to be an ICU nurse at St. David's North.
Ramesh Bishta. He's dedicating his pin to his late father and all of his loved ones. His future plans are ER nursing and then eventually CRNA.
Carla Kashishin, dedicating her pin to her dad, John, her mom, Zovinar, and her sister, Dessel. And her plan is to become a cardiology nurse.
Marilyn Villatoro. She's dedicating her pin to her mom, Maria, dad, Oscar, and her brothers. Her future plans are ER nursing.
Antoinette Cruz, dedicating her pin to her mom, Riza, dad, Tony, family, friends, Marie and Abraham, and her plans are to be an ICU nurse.
Penming Wang. He's dedicating his pin to his mom and his sister. He writes, "My mom is one of the strongest and most amazing women I've ever known." His plans are ER nursing and operating room.
Alyssa Hernandez, dedicating her pin to her mom, Lacey, and dad, Carlos, with future plans to work at Dell Children's as an ER trauma nurse.
Megan Hamma. She's dedicating her pin to her mom, and her future plans are to be an OR nurse at St. David's Surgical Hospital.
Maria Duarte, dedicating her pin to her mom and her sister, with future plans to be a cardiac ICU nurse at the Mayo Clinic.
Alma Duarte. She's dedicating her pin to her mom and the best sister ever. Her future plans are to work in the cardiac ICU at the Mayo Clinic.
Marielle Salinas, dedicating her pin to her mom Anna, Cindy, Hugo, Chewy, and her plan is to be an ER nurse at St. David's South Austin Medical Center.
Adriana Torres. She's dedicating her pin to her mom, Maria Torres, sister Juliana Torres, and her grandma, Terry Govea. Her plans are working at the ER at Del Seton Medical.
Andrea Sosa, dedicating her pin to her family and Sergio, but especially her parents, Samuel and Olga Sosa, with plans to be an ER department nurse at Methodist, Maine.
Alex Starr. He's dedicating his pin to his parents, Susan and Dwight, his brother Nick, and the Goose. His future plans are to work at North Austin Medical Center in the OR.
Zuhair Tariq, dedicating his pin to all U.S. military service members, active duty and veterans, and his plan is to keep giving back to the community.
Taylor Milburn. She is dedicating her pin to God, her mom, dad, and most importantly, her daughter Zaya. She says, "My daughter is and always has been my why. This pin is for her. Thank you, Jesus." Her plans are to work in labor and delivery at St. David's North and then eventually be a nurse entrepreneur.
Alejandra Morales Vizcaya, dedicating her pin to her mom and dad for the love and support, Lucia and Gilbert for feeding me and everything you do for me, and Victoria for keeping me sane. The plan is to be a St. David's nurse, or an ER nurse at St. David's, Maine.
Irene Lopera Villanueva. She's dedicating her pin to God, her husband, and family for always believing in her, supporting her throughout this journey. Her future plans are to be the best NICU nurse at Dell Children's.
Julia Vallone, with dedicating her pin to her family with plans to be a pediatric nurse.
Kaylin Johnson. She's dedicating her pin to her mom, dad, and friends. Her plans are to be a pediatric nurse.
Julissa Torres, dedicating her pin to her God, her mom, Tito, and Zach, with future plans to be an ER nurse at Seton Hayes in Kyle, Texas, and to get certified as a sexual assault nurse examiner.
Lauren Varesic. She's dedicating her pin to her family and friends. Her plans are to be a labor and delivery nurse at St. David's North Austin.
Janae Valencia, dedicating her pin to her family and husband, and plans are to start at Seton Northwest as an intermediate care nurse.
Kayla Morris. She's dedicating her pin to her mom, Sandra, and supportive family. Her future plans are the pediatric ICU at Texas Children's Hospital in Medical Center.
Celine Manawang, dedicating her pin to her parents, Celso and Irene, and her amazing support system, with future plans to be a PEDS IMC nurse at Dell Children's.
Shantavia Beverly. She's dedicating her pin to her grandmother, Elsie, mom, and her family. Her future plans are the level 4 NICU at St. David's and then eventually CRNA.
Christian Kagame, dedicating his pin to God, family, friends, and to those who came before him, with plans to work in the ICU at Ascension Medical Center.
Devin Wilson. He's dedicating his pin to his family and loved ones. His future plans are to work in the operating room in San Diego.
Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jeffrey Utzinger, Dean of Teaching and Learning and Associate Professor of English.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Ooh, there we go. I have the distinct pleasure to offer greetings and congratulations on behalf of President Don Christian, our Provost Christy Kirk, our Board of Regents, and all the faculty and staff at Concordia University, Texas. Congratulations. I want to offer these words of congratulations from kind of a bit of a personal place. Someone who has the title of doctor, but as my children remind me, not the right kind of doctor, or from the patient side. I could never do what you do. Now, my wife hates that phrase because she works with blind and visually impaired students. Whenever she shares that with someone and they say, "Oh, you're so special, I could never do what you do." And I know that at some point in the evening, she's going to turn to me and say, "I hate when people say that to me. I love the work I do. It's what God has put me on this earth to do, and I love to help people." And since I love my wife and we've been married for 30 years, I say, "You're right." And I could never do what you do. I don't know what your journey has been like, but I know parts of your journeys. I know that COVID has disrupted part of your educational journey that has made your personal and professional goals more difficult. I would imagine that you have sacrificed lots of time with friends and family. I suspect that you have sacrificed money. I suspect that there have been times when you have felt doubt. And I'm so glad that you have stuck with this work, that you have decided to do what God has called you to do, and that you love helping people. One of the distinct pleasures of my job is that I get to observe our nursing faculty when they teach. Now, I can talk to you about affairs of the heart and literature, and I get faint at the sight of blood. So some point every time I'm observing a nursing faculty member teach, when you begin to talk about gastrointestinal anomalies, diseases of the lungs, feces, my hands begin to sweat a little bit, and I think, oh my God, I'm going to pass out. And then I think, well, you know, I'm in a room full of 40 people who are going to be nurses, so it will be okay. And then I begin to wonder, are they J1s? Are they C students? Have they taken adult health? I'm so grateful that you all have chosen to do the work that you love, to answer God's call, and to help people. One more quick story to illustrate how grateful I am for the work that you do. This summer I was working on my house. It's really old. I was replacing windows, and I broke one of the window frames. And I'm carefully pulling out the shards of glass, and a very large one falls, hits me on the wrist right below my glove line. And my first thought is, oh, that's bad. My second thought was, maybe I can use this in December when I talk at the pinning ceremony. And my third thought was, I better get in the house before I pass out and the neighbors start to gossip. My wife takes me to the emergency room. Doesn't seem that bad. It's not that big. We go to the emergency room. It's about 20 minutes south of our house. It's in a small town. There's nobody in the emergency waiting room. And I'm thinking, well, this is great. And a gentleman comes behind the glass. I tell him, hey, I think I cut myself pretty bad. And he goes like this. And I go like this. And I'm like, oh my God, he's checking to see if I hit a vital organ or something. What is going on? My anxiety about being injured is only raised by being in that emergency room setting. But he finally gets me in the back, and he sees that I'm wearing a Concordia mask, and he says, what do you do? And most people don't know what a dean does, so I just say, I'm a college English professor. And he says, do you like to write stories? And I said, I do like to write stories. And he says, well, I've been taking some online courses during COVID, and I've been taking literature courses, and I took a creative writing course. And he proceeded to tell me all these stories that he's writing. Sometimes I get a little bit nervous during these conversations because inevitably they lead to someone telling me a great idea for a sci-fi novel that we should write together. And I have to kind of gently tell them, well, actually, I write nonfiction personal stories about my life. So even if you are in my story, there's a good chance you're not going to be able to fly or walk through walls. But here's the deal. The nurse that day turned out to be a superhero. And here's why. I don't know if he could tell how anxious I was. I don't know if it was because he'd been doing this for a long time, so he knew what to do when he sees somebody in distress. But in the process of talking to me about things that I loved, asking me to tell my story, I hardly even noticed that he was cleaning my wound, prepping me to receive 3 stitches. You guys are some of the smartest people in this room right now. And you want to rely on that training, you want to rely on everything you've learned, but also remember all the other things that you know. And some of the most important care that you will give to people is connecting with them on a personal level. Because there are people that are so grateful that you do what you do, because we know that we could never, ever do it. Not everybody can deliver bad news or deliver babies. Not everybody can explain complicated medical jargon and procedures, sometimes in several languages. Not everybody can heal people and put them on the road to recovery. So, on behalf of the entire Concordia community, again, thank you for the work that you have done, that you're about to do, for answering God's call to help people. Let's give them another round of applause. And I think I'm going to close this with a word of prayer. All right, Tanya's not giving me any signal otherwise. Please pray with me. Jesus, you are a great healer. And we thank you for the gift of life, for this season of life. And we thank you especially for these women and men who have dedicated their lives to helping others. We pray that as they continue their journey, you continue to give them strength as they finish the work they need to do for this semester, for the credentialing they need to do, for some of the decisions they still need to make, for maybe moves that they need to make. Continue to hold them, guide them, give them strength. Pray a special prayer of thanks for the people in this room who have supported, loved, nurtured, encouraged all of these nurses. Pray that as they go out into the world, that when they become impatient, that you would give them patience. When they feel fear, that you would give them courage. When you feel doubt, that you would give them confidence. Again, thank you for all the gifts that you have given them, for their servant hearts and their willingness to help people. All these things we ask in your precious and holy name. Amen. Thank you.
Family and friends, this concludes the pinning ceremony for the graduating class of 2022. Please stand as the students recess and then join us in the lobby for a nice reception.